When my husband returned from battle, he brought back 2 orphan children who had lost their parents. Later, while the 2 orphans were roughhousing, they accidentally bumped into me, who was 8 months pregnant. I died in childbirth. As I clung to my last breath, my husband pushed open the door. His voice cold and ruthless, "You should have died long ago. If not for you, how would my 2 children have suffered such cold indifference? How would Yunner have been reduced to an unseen concubine?" When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to a year prior, the very day he brought home those 2 orphans. I took pity on them, thinking they might keep our unborn child company. I clenched my fists and said coldly, "In that case, send them to the academy. Let them study alongside the imperial princes and noble sons." "Madam, the general has returned, and my maid, Xiao Chui, hesitated." I set down my brush, staring at the character for enmity on the rice paper. "He also brought back 2 children." I said flatly. "Madam, how did you know?" Xiao Cui murmured in confusion. I folded the paper and tossed it into the nearby fire. Watching it burn, my heart remained utterly still. Calmly, I walked toward the main gate of the general's residence. Lin Zhanyuan saw me and blurted out impatiently, "Sure. I received your letter from the other day. You're pregnant, aren't you?" I saw these 2 children orphaned and pitiful, so I brought them back to keep our unborn child company. Company is just an excuse. The real intent is to have them inherit half of the Xiao family's fortune. Isn't it? I looked at the man before me, clad in splendid battle robes, a dashing figure on his steed, the dream lover of countless young ladies in the capital. Yet beneath that facade lurked a beast in human form, a heartless, treacherous creature. In my past life, Lin Zhanyuan used the same words to persuade me to keep his 2 orphan children. As the daughter of a military family, I knew full well how war left countless children homeless. My heart softened, and I took in the 2 orphans, raising them as my own. Lin Zhanyuan adored these children even more, providing them with the finest food, clothing, and everything they needed. I thought he simply adored children. Watching him, I'd often imagine how my own child would be cherished by its father. He truly was a good father, just not to mine. He was devoted to those 2 orphans. I will never forget this until my dying breath. Pushed down by those 2 orphans, I died in childbirth. With my last breath, Lin Zhanyuan revealed the truth about them. It turned out those 2 children were his, born to a woman outside our marriage. His cold, ruthless voice still echoes in my ears. "You should have died long ago. If not for you, how could my 2 children have endured such cold indifference? How could Yunner have been reduced to a disgraceful concubine?" Lin Zhanyuan wished me dead. But in this life, I will live on, and live well. The 2 orphans stood timidly behind Lin Zhanyuan, their bright eyes fixed on me. I clenched my fists so tightly my nails dug into my flesh. After finally calming the hatred in my heart, I said coldly, "Since that is the case, send them to the academy. Let them study alongside the imperial princes and nobles." Lin Zhanyuan looked visibly taken aback. He'd been utterly certain I'd keep the children, but he hadn't anticipated me sending these 2 orphans of unknown origin to study in the capital's academy. The capital's academy taught only the sons and grandsons of princes and nobles, or the offspring of high-ranking officials. Wouldn't that be beneath their station? Lin Zhanyuan hesitated, fearing his 2 precious children might suffer injustice. A meaningful smile touched my lips. "How could it? My lord. Since they'll be companions for the child in my womb, their education must be proper. We can't have them speaking crudely and lacking manners like those fatherless, motherless children outside. We mustn't let the general's residence become the subject of everyone's gossip." Lin Zhanyuan's expression suddenly changed, then quickly returned to normal. He stepped forward, took my hand, and patted it. You always think things through. Sure. I smiled gently. The general has been so busy with campaigns. Such small matters needn't trouble you. Then I beckoned the two orphans closer. What are your names? The older boy answered. My name is Su Tingzhou. The younger girl, terribly shy, clung tightly to the boy's hand. The boy added, This is my sister, Su Ninger. Her name sounded exactly like my own character. How unlucky. Xiao Chui. Take the children to the guest quarters for a bath and prepare some food for them. Xiao Chui immediately led the children away. That evening, Lin Zhonyuan did not rest in my courtyard. Xiao Chui removed the hairpin from my hair. Her voice brimming with indignation, Madam. Who knows where those two children came from? They could very well be his offspring with some enchantress. And the general, why must he bring home every orphan in the land? You're far too forgiving. In my past life, Xiao Chui had spoken to me in exactly the same way. But back then, I dismissed it as idle chatter, utterly enamored with Lin Zhonyuan and trusting his words implicitly. Seeing Lin Zhonyuan's extraordinary affection for those two orphans, Xiao Chui grew increasingly intolerant, nagging me about it day after day. Unfortunately, one day Lin Zhonyuan overheard her. How dare such a treacherous person lurk beside Shuer? Drag her out and beat her to death. His face darkened as he bellowed the order. Xiao Chui had served me since childhood, as close as a sister, so naturally I pleaded for her life. But Lin Zhonyuan was as hard as stone, insisting on beating her to death. Only after my desperate entreaties did he relent. In the end, Xiao Chui was banished from the general's residence. I gave her a large sum of silver, instructing her to return to the marquis's mansion to serve my mother. Yet on the day of my death, Lin Zhonyuan declared, Remember your handmaiden? I cast her into a brothel. Unable to bear the humiliation, she bit her tongue and took her own life. This is no fault of mine. She was your handmaiden after all. Those who dishonor my child deserve death. I combed my own beautiful hair, silencing Xiao Cui's reckless words. This lifetime, I will protect her. You two came from the marquis's residence. Remember, words bring misfortune. Don't let the general hear these things. Xiao Cui nodded and replied, Yes. The next day, Lin Zhonyuan arrived at my courtyard for breakfast, holding one child in each hand. Su Tingzhou performed a proper bow, Madam. Su Ninger timidly echoed the greeting. Sure. I'll take the children out to have clothes tailored shortly. Shall I bring you some pastries from Yunzhai? Lin Zhonyuan stood there projecting the image of a devoted husband, unaware that I had already seen through his true nature. I smiled faintly. What trouble could the general encounter taking two children out? I'll accompany you. After all, I know more about clothing matters. Lin Zhonyuan agreed repeatedly, believing I was still the woman he once toyed with, whose eyes were only for him. How amusing. Lin Zhonyuan. This time, I will bring you to ruin. Lin Zhonyuan and I took the two children to the renowned capital tailor. Brocade weaving. Joy lit up Lin Zhonyuan's face. His children deserved only the finest in food, clothing, and necessities. But this was merely the first step in my plan. Not the general's wife? You're here to select fabrics too? The speaker was the wife of Minister Gu, an imperial official. Her child also attended the academy. Before I could speak, she gasped in astonishment, Whose children are these? Just as I was about to tell the truth, Lin Zhonyuan stepped in, spinning a tale. These are children from distant relatives. Their parents passed away from illness. So I took them in. I nearly laughed out loud. At least make up a believable lie. Who in the capital didn't know? The legitimate daughter of the Marquis of Shao had married an orphan raised by the Marquis after he brought him back from foreign campaigns. What kind of relatives did Lin Zhonyuan have? Madame Gu shot me a questioning glance. I gave a slight nod. A noblewoman of high standing needed no further explanation to grasp the situation. Madame Gu said no more and left. Lin Zhanyuan browsed through fabrics, selecting 8 sets of summer attire for the children. Then, with a sweeping gesture, he declared, based on these children's measurements, order 10 sets each for spring, autumn, and winter. Deliver them to the general's residence. Suppressing the urge to curse, I smiled at Lin Zhanyuan and said, "Isn't that a bit excessive? After all, it's not." Lin Zhanyuan anticipated my unspoken words, adopting a magnanimous air as he leaned close to whisper, "Madam, these children have endured years of hardship outside the home and lost both parents. I simply feel compassion for them." I understood. He was about to start reflecting on his own origins again. Before, I'd been blinded by my own foolishness, thinking Lin Zhanyuan was merely overflowing with compassion and concern for the orphans, hence his kindness toward them. Little did I know he was using pity as a cover for his true intentions, fatherly affection. Suppressing the nausea rising in my stomach, I replied calmly, "Very well. So be it." A few days later, the new clothes tailored for the children were delivered to the general's residence. Lin Zhanyuan happened to be present and demanded payment. My eyes narrowed sharply. 100 taels of silver? Didn't that scoundrel even consider his own meager monthly salary? I took a deep breath and replied calmly, "Wait a moment. I'll be right back." The delivery boy grew displeased, never seen anyone drag their feet over silver like this. Can't afford it? Don't buy. Where in the capital do you find families like yours? Lin Zhanyuan loathed having his pride trampled. His face darkened. You think I won't have my men tear your Jinshu spinning shop to pieces? The boy wasn't intimidated. Go ahead if you dare. Our shop's owner is the princess. You'd better watch who you're picking a fight with. Seeing this, I hurried to soothe Lin Zhanyuan. "General, please calm down. I'll fetch the banknote from the storeroom right away." Lin Zhanyuan angrily shook off my hand and pulled a pair of Hitian jade bracelets from his waist pouch. "Is this enough?" The servant's expression changed instantly. "More than enough. More than enough." He fawned. Lin Zhanyuan left for the annex, carrying the summer clothes for the 2 children. I slipped a silver ingot from my sleeve and handed it to Xiao Cui. Following my instructions from yesterday, Xiao Cui gave the servant the silver and casually asked him to spread the rumor. The clothes arrived that morning. The rumors began spreading by afternoon. Unfortunately, Lin Zhanyuan hadn't left the house that day. The next morning, he sent the 2 children to school before heading to the early court session. After court, he didn't return home. His trusted aide came back with word that he'd gone drinking with the officials. When he finally returned, Lin Zhanyuan's expression was grim. I feigned ignorance. "What troubles you, General?" Lin Zhanyuan picked up the teacup on the table and slammed it hard onto the floor. Still unsatisfied, he overturned the entire table. What was this? The rage of the incompetent. They dared to mock me. Have they forgotten whose blood secured this peace? Of course not. It was my father. I risked my life on the battlefield to forge this empire. And them? What have they done? I hurriedly tried to stop him. Lin Zhanyuan wanted to die. But I didn't. General, words bring misfortune. Never utter such things again. Lin Zhanyuan wouldn't listen, his voice growing louder instead. Even the emperor shows me some deference. What are those censors? Laughing at me? Do they even have the right? You must know how many spies the general's mansion has. These words could easily reach the emperor's ears within the hour. I must quickly declare my loyalty and distance myself from this. General, these are the basic duties of a subject. Have you forgotten everything my father taught you? Lin Zhanyuan looked as if he'd suffered the greatest injustice. Don't bring up your father. That coward of a father of yours fought victorious battles his whole life. yet only ended up as a marquis. If I let this ungrateful bastard keep talking, the entire marquis's residence would go down with him. I signaled my shadow guard to knock him unconscious, then helped him back to his room. Lin Zhanyuan fell asleep snoring loudly. My back ached from exhaustion, so I went to sleep in the next room. I was awakened by the sound of a child crying. "Daddy, I don't want to go to school anymore." Su Ninger sobbed, her voice full of hurt. Lin Zhanyuan asked patiently, "Why, sweetheart?" They all laugh at me, calling me an unwanted bastard, saying I'm a child with no father or mother. Su Ninger was young, a child who couldn't hide her feelings. But I clearly have a father. It's all my brother's fault for not letting me speak. My father is clearly the mighty and formidable general. Su Tingzhou, though young, possessed a maturity beyond his years. Su Ninger's tears irritated him. "What do you know? Father's only real child now is the one in Xiaoshu's belly. You and I, before she died, were nothing but unwanted bastards." Hearing this, Lin Zhanyuan's heart ached. He gently soothed both children. "Trust father. Before this month ends, you too, and your mother, will all live rightfully in the general's mansion." My body trembled slightly. That beast couldn't wait any longer. The sudden turn of events forced Lin Zhanyuan to advance his plans. Lin Zhanyuan. Oh, Lin Zhanyuan. Our decades of childhood friendship couldn't withstand the allure of outside flowers. Swallowing the bitterness in my heart, I walked out of the room as if nothing had happened. During breakfast, Lin Zhanyuan fed Su Ninger her porridge while saying, "Sure, I plan to send the children to school today." My hand paused midway with the side dish, my eyes flickering. If the general wishes to go, then so be it. I'd be curious to see how a general would handle the unfiltered words of children. After breakfast, Lin Zhanyuan took the two children to school first. I had Xiao Chui send word to the eldest princess, inviting her to join us for the fun. As the children dismounted from the carriage at the school entrance, the sixth prince taunted them, "Oh, aren't these two parentless brats? Come to find someone to complain to?" Su Ninger couldn't hold back her emotions. Her eyes welled up as she retorted loudly, "I'm not." Su Tingzhou grabbed Su Ninger's wrist, trying to restrain her. The sixth prince grew amused. "Then tell me, who is your father? Could it be that your children born to General Lin outside his marriage?" Lin Zhanyuan's face flushed alternately crimson and pale. Finally, suppressing his anger, he bowed respectfully to the sixth prince. "Your Highness, these children are from a distant relative's family. Having lost both parents, I took them in to care for them." Madame Gu, whom I'd met at the brocade spinning house, arrived then, covering her mouth with a handkerchief. She chuckled. "Who in the capital doesn't know General Lin as the orphan Lord Xiao picked up on the battlefield? What kind of relatives are these suddenly appearing? General Lin. Don't let some random nobodies fool you." Madame Gu loved nothing more than cracking sunflower seeds with other noble ladies, gossiping about each family's intricate affairs. Lin Zhanyuan's actions at Jinxiu spinning that day had already spread like wildfire throughout the capital. On the very day Lin Zhanyuan brought the two children back to the general's residence, I sent word to the eldest princess, Xia Shuyao. In my letter, I explained my current predicament to Xia Shuyao and made it clear that I might need her help in the future. Xia Shuyao is the emperor's elder sister, the biological daughter of the current empress dowager, and my childhood classmate from the academy. In our youth, we hunted together, practiced swordsmanship, got into mischief, and even knelt in punishment side by side. Our bond was as close as siblings. Now, seated in Xia Shuyao's carriage nibbling snacks, she vented my frustration outside, taunting Lin Zhanyuan with scorn. "General Lin, how is it that this princess was unaware you had other relatives?" A flicker of surprise crossed Lin Zhanyuan's eyes before he replied, "The princess may not be aware. His explanation remained unfinished. Xie Shirao cut him off. How could this princess be unaware? General Lin. What grand gestures you make. With a single wave of my hand, I spent 100 taels of silver on brocade fabric. Yet when the delivery boy came to collect payment, you couldn't even produce a silver note. What kind of lowly riffraff do you think you are? Deserving to wear garments made from my brocade? If word of this gets out, how can my shop continue doing business? Lin Zhanyuan's face turned ashen at her words, a flash of icy coldness darting through his eyes. Then, as if recalling something, he asked, "The princess and my Shuer have been as sisters since childhood. Could it be Shuer told you this?" Xia Shuyao's brows furrowed slightly. Lin Zhanyuan was framing her for ingratitude and disloyalty. If she admitted it today, the rumor would spread that the legitimate daughter of the Shao family, descended from a military lineage, couldn't even tolerate 2 battlefield orphans. What a monstrous accusation! The people's collective scorn could drown me. Xia Shuyao adopted the demeanor of a princess, a cold smile curling her lips. Is General Lin questioning me? This world belongs to the Xia family, not yours. Lin Zhanyuan. Oh, right, after all. My good-for-nothing younger brother still owes the general a measure of deference. At these words, the women present gasped in unison. His Majesty, the Son of Heaven, born a dragon among men, why should he bow to some minor commander? Lin Zhanyuan knew his place and immediately knelt to plead his case. Your Highness, I never uttered such treasonous words. I beg your understanding. Xia Shirao ignored Lin Zhanyuan, lifting her gaze to Su Tingzhou and Su Ning'er beside him. What? Having studied alongside princes and nobles, you don't even bend your knees before this princess? Su Tingzhou and Su Ning'er trembled uncontrollably. Su Ning'er, particularly frightened by her fierce demeanor, began to sob softly. Huh? Crying this early in the morning? Trying to bring bad luck to this prince? The 6th prince remarked with disdain. Then, he moved closer to Xia Shirao, tugging at her sleeve and whining. Auntie, I don't want to attend this academy anymore. Please ask Father Emperor to hire a tutor for me. Xia Shirao inquired. Why is that? The 6th prince pouted. Auntie, you know perfectly well. I'm Father Emperor's son, how could I possibly study in the same academy as those two? Every word from the 6th prince dragged Su Tingzhou and Su Ning'er through the mud. Su Tingzhou couldn't stand it anymore. He glared fiercely at the 6th prince. You and I are only separated by a father. Without your father, you wouldn't be much different from me. Before Lin Zhanyuan could say anything, Xia Shuyao flew into a rage. Attendants! Su Tingzhou dares to be insolent to His Highness the 6th prince. Administer 20 lashes. That bastard of unknown origin needs a lesson. Unless he's beaten into submission, he'll never know his place. Lin Zhanyuan, though heartbroken, knelt on the ground, unable to bear it. Princess, the child is still young. 20 lashes might cost him his life. My thoughts raced. I'd never seen Lin Zhanyuan so submissive. Now, this hidden side of him all for 2 bastard children. When I turned 15, the sons of noble families came courting so often they nearly wore out the threshold of the Shao Marquis' mansion. Those days, Mother spent every evening in her room discussing these young men's character and appearance with me. Lin Zhanyuan was already a general under my father's command back then. When the Xiongnu invaded the border, Father rushed off to battle. Before his departure, Lin Zhanyuan met me in the peach grove. Gazing at me with deep affection, he asked cautiously, if I return alive from this campaign, would you consider marrying me, miss? A breeze swept through, scattering petals as the spirited youth declared his heart to me. No one could refuse such a proposal, especially not someone cherished since childhood. Naturally, I agreed. Since our marriage, Lin Zhanyuan has treated me with utmost kindness. indulging my every wish and always considering my feelings. Childhood sweethearts. Innocent and pure. It was a tale of romance that once charmed the capital. Yet even such a heaven-sent union could be shattered effortlessly by outsiders. No fly lands on a seamless egg. Had Lin Zhanyuan's resolve been steadfast? How could he have kept a mistress outside and brought back 2 children? I watched Lin Zhanyuan kneel on the ground, pleading for the child of his concubine. Back then, he was so proud. My mother had vehemently opposed our marriage, ready to beat him to death. But after enduring 60 lashes, he insisted on marrying me, finally winning over my mother. The young man I remembered, whose spine wouldn't bend an inch, now knelt begging for that child. Xie Shuyao glanced at me without a trace of emotion. I shook my head, signaling to spare him. Then Xie Shuyao asked, "Is General Lin taking the punishment for him?" "True enough. It was your failure to raise him properly. Since the general intercedes, I cannot refuse him. The child shall receive 5 strokes. As for General Lin, 40 strokes." Xie Shurao swept away with a flourish. From the carriage, I heard Su Tingzhou's wails and Lin Zhanyuan's pained gasps. Yet my heart felt no pity or reluctance. Lin Zhanyuan deserved every moment of it. As for Su Tingzhou, blame him for being so young yet so viciously scheming. After receiving his punishment, Lin Zhanyuan took the 2 children back to the general's residence. I stood on the bridge feeding the fish in the lotus pond. Lin Zhanyuan limped over to me. "My lady. What a refined pastime." I feigned surprise. "General, what has happened to you?" Lin Zhanyuan seethed at the memory of the beating, "All because of your so-called dear sister." Then, narrowing his eyes, he scrutinized me. "Madam, you truly did not go to the princess to make accusations?" At that moment, Xiao Chui interjected, "General, Madam has been utterly exhausted these past days. The physician examined her and said she shows signs of spotting. It would be unwise for her to travel or exert herself now. You know the lady's heart better than anyone. The general is a man of integrity, she adores you. Why would she ever complain?" Lin Zhanyuan's expression softened slightly. "I've wronged the lady. General, you've suffered. Tomorrow I'll go to the palace and ask my dear sister what's going on." I put on an act of backing him up, feigning anger. Lin Zhanyuan, fearing these rumors might reach the emperor's ears, hurriedly stopped me and explained, "My lady, it's just a minor offense Tingzhou committed. It's nothing serious." But I wasn't about to let him off the hook if that orphan made a mistake. How dare he make the general take the blame? He's not our own flesh and blood. Isn't the general being overly affectionate? Lin Zhanyuan knew this wasn't the time to break ties. He coaxed me with every persuasive word he could muster. "Madam," he said, "when I look at him, I see myself as I once was, lowly and worthless. I only wish to save him as best I can. Seeing him dredge up such old wounds, I feigned concern and soothed him. General, you are already a dragon among men. Why belittle yourself? I won't go." During the evening meal, Lin Zhanyuan glanced at me several times. His words caught in his throat. I followed his lead and asked, "General, is there something you wish to discuss with me?" Lin Zhanyuan hesitated for a moment, sighed, and then slowly spoke. "A soldier who fought alongside me died protecting me. His wife has nowhere to go. I was wondering, could you take her in for a while? Once she finds a place to stay, she can leave." In his eyes, I had always been a kind-hearted, pure soul. That woman was already suffering so terribly, and her husband had died protecting Lin Zhanyuan. I naturally found no reason to refuse him and agreed. Long before Lin Zhanyuan returned to the mansion, the secret guards had already informed me of the children's tearful pleas to him. Seeing her brother beaten to a pulp, Suninger wept uncontrollably, throwing herself into Lin Zhanyuan's arms. She wailed, I want my mother. I want my mother. That little girl was so sweet. Her big eyes brimming with tears, I couldn't bear to refuse her. Let alone Lin Zhanyuan. Her own father. Su Tingzhou, though outwardly silent, saw his children suffer. Lin Zhanyuan towered over him with imposing authority. He could never throw himself into Lin Zhanyuan's arms and weep like a little girl. Seeing the injustice done to both children, Lin Zhanyuan's heart softened and he agreed. I thought to myself, this works out perfectly, it saves me the trouble of seeking out that fox-like woman myself. Seeing my consent, Lin Zhanyuan grew impatient. After supper, he brought the woman into the mansion, dressed in a rose-red gown that revealed her bare shoulder. She murmured softly, Madam. Lin Zhanyuan introduced her, Madam. This is the widow of one of my soldiers. Her name is Yuner. My eyes reddened slightly as I sighed deeply, alas. Lady Yun has become a widow so young. Seeing this, my heart aches for her. No sooner had the words left my mouth than I noticed Yuner's face had turned pale, as if she might collapse at any moment. Seeing Lin Zhanyuan move to support her, I spoke first. Xiao Cui, quickly escort Lady Yun back to her quarters to rest. She must be heartbroken after losing her husband so suddenly. My words struck a nerve with Lin Zhanyuan. His expression shifted slightly, but unable to vent his frustration. He feigned confusion and asked, why does the lady choose to touch upon such a painful subject? I lifted my eyes to this revolting man, took a sip of tea, and countered, General, you're overthinking. Isn't what Shuer said the truth? I saw the general's soul had drifted entirely to Lady Yun. Was he thinking of taking her? Settling her properly? Lin Zhanyuan's brow furrowed deeply. I snorted coldly. He was actually considering my suggestion. After a moment, Lin Zhanyuan still chose to uphold his hypocritical facade. Madam, what nonsense are you spouting? When I married you, I promised you a lifetime of devotion to one woman only. Your husband has not forgotten. Ha! Lin Zhanyuan uttered those words without fear of divine retribution. He may not have forgotten, but I long ago did. I refuse to engage in any more pretense with this man. As long as the general remembers. Shuer felt a bit tired, likely because the child in her womb was too restless. So she went to rest first. After Yuner entered the mansion, she behaved herself for 2 days. These past few days, the other 2 children had been dining with Yuner as well. I was quite content with the peace and quiet, pondering how to get rid of this child in my womb. Just then, I saw Su Tingzhou and Su Ninger playing kuju in the courtyard. Yuner sat embroidering a handkerchief in the pavilion nearby. I sent Xiao Cui to fetch a cloak for me, lest any unexpected trouble later involve her. Entering the side courtyard, I placed my hand on my belly. I thought to myself, do not blame your mother. Your father deserved to die. If keeping his venomous bloodline, one that abandons wife and child, meant you were never born, then it would have been better if you had never existed from the start. Yuner and Lin Zhanyuan's scheme was to pin the blame for my miscarriage on 2 reckless children. By walking into their trap, she wouldn't refuse. Yuner discreetly signaled to Su Tingzhou. Su Tingzhou charged wildly at the kuju ball, finally knocking me to the ground. My face drained of color, cold sweat beading on my forehead. My child. Save my child. Yuner set down her embroidery, came to help me up, and hurriedly said, Quick! Fetch the physician. Her voice still dripped with false concern. Madam, don't worry. The child will surely be saved. I rolled my eyes and feigned unconsciousness. When I awoke, a crowd gathered around my bed. Xiao Cui wept uncontrollably. I hadn't told her that the child was also part of my plan. Xia Shuyao knew. Yet she still felt pity for me. Only my husband, Lin Zhanyuan, was secretly overjoyed. Still, he spoke in a hoarse whisper, Shuer, We'll have other children. I closed my tear-filled eyes and laughed desperately. The child is gone. General. That was our first child. Xia Shuyao couldn't bear to watch and immediately stepped in to defend me. Drag that beast in here. This princess should have beaten him to death long ago. Otherwise, he wouldn't have caused this colossal disaster. Lin Zhanyuan reflexively knelt on the ground. Princess. Please calm your anger. It was merely a child's innocent mistake. Xia Shuyao kicked the kneeling Lin Zhanyuan. Gritting her teeth, that's just some unwanted bastard child. The one in Shuer's wound was your true flesh and blood. Even if the emperor himself came today, it wouldn't matter. This princess will beat him to death and avenge Shuer. Xia Shuyao's attendants dragged Su Tingzhou out and forced him face down onto a wooden bench. The cane fell upon his back. As Su Tingzhou's agonized cries echoed, Yuner knelt low beside Xia Shuyao, sobbing softly, Princess. You mustn't beat him. He's so young. He was already punished last time. I opened my eyes. My gaze sharp. Lady Yun. These children are not your kin. Why do you kneel? Shuer. Yuner only grieves for the children. Why must you be so relentless? Lin Zhanyuan, unable to bear seeing the woman he cherished suffer such humiliation, confronted me. My already pale face turned an even deeper shade of grim. You call her Yuner? I asked. Disbelief etched across my features. The room fell deathly silent the moment the words left my lips, all eyes turning to Lin Zhanyuan. Under the weight of so many gazes, Lin Zhanyuan felt as if needles were pricking his back. Yuner isn't one to be trifled with. Now she has a golden opportunity to enter the general's residence. She began kowtowing on the ground. Madam, please persuade the princess. That child must not be struck. I asked, why? Yuner's body trembled with sobs. Tears the size of beans falling freely. Those two children are the general's own flesh and blood. I'm unable to move. Xia Shurao grabbed Yuner's hair and slapped her across the face. How dare you spout nonsense and slander General Lin? Guards. Throw her into the dungeon. Behead her tomorrow. Lin Zhanyuan knew Xia Shurao's temperament. She meant every word. If he didn't confess now, tomorrow he'd see 3 corpses, 1 adult and 2 children. Lin Zhanyuan immediately knelt. Your Majesty. I am guilty. Those 2 children are indeed my own flesh and blood. Hearing this, I was struck dumb. My face frozen in disbelief. The children born to the general and some woman outside? He killed my children? Sure. Let me explain. Lin Zhanyuan tried once more to placate me. But he knew it was futile. When I married him, I had made my stance clear. If he took another woman, I would not cling to him. Princess. Enough. Stop the beating. If word gets out, they'll say I'm petty, unable to tolerate even a child. My voice was barely a whisper as I forced a bitter smile. General. Once I'm stronger, we shall divorce. Sure. Lin Zhanyuan hesitated, barely managing to call my name. General. Since your heart belongs elsewhere, how could I possibly make things difficult for you? Leave. I'm tired. The others dispersed, but Xia Shurao remained. Her eyes reddened as she said with heartache. Sure. Why must you be so hard on yourself? Keeping this child might not be so bad. I sighed, my eyes fixed on her with solemnity. If I had a father like Lin Zhanyuan, I'd rather die. Enough of him. Xiao Heng, what's the latest on that Yuner? Xiao Heng is the foremost secret guard of the Xiao Marquis household. My father began training him before I was even born, entrusting him with my protection. His network of spies permeates every corner of Xia Kingdom. A mere Yuner couldn't escape the Xiao family's intelligence web. Miss Su Yuner hails from Suzhou. Her family was once quite well off. Years ago, her father was caught smuggling salt. The entire Su family's assets were confiscated, the men executed, and the women exiled to brothels. Xiao Heng's lips twitched slightly as he spoke slowly. Xia Shireo's delicate brows furrowed, so this Su Yuner comes from a tainted background? Is Lin Zhanyuan blind? A flicker of sorrow crossed my eyes. To think that I, the legitimate daughter of the esteemed Marquis Xiao, would share a husband with a courtesan. My stomach churned violently. I turned and leaned over the bedside, retching. But nothing came up. Xiao Heng grew anxious. Miss, I'll fetch the physician at once. I quickly called him back. Stop. I'm fine. Continue. Are those two children really Lin Zhanyuan's? Xiao Heng halted, realizing his outburst. He bowed his head in embarrassment. The subordinate can confirm Su Tingzhou is definitely not Lin Zhanyuan's child. As for Su Ninger, her background is rather complicated and turbulent. I shall investigate further. I waved him away. My mind began plotting how to make Lin Zhanyuan faces just deserts. During my convalescence these past 6 weeks, my chambers were sealed off by guards from the Xiao Marquis estate. Lin Zhanyuan tried several times to enter, only to be turned back by the sentries. Lin Zhanyuan's martial arts were formidable, yet he still fell slightly short compared to Xiao Heng. Xiao Heng would never allow this hypocrite to come within an inch of me again. Unable to enter, he stood outside daily, consumed by anguish and bitter regret, pleading, "Sure, I've made mistakes. The bond we shared since childhood, can you truly cast it aside so easily? What man today doesn't have multiple wives and concubines? I merely wish to bring her into the household as a secondary wife." His lamentations gradually turned to bitter accusations. I admit my faults. But are you without blame? 5 years of marriage. Yet you bear no child. The greatest of the 3 unfilial acts is failing to produce an heir. Yuner has borne the heirs. She is my true benefactor. Your jealousy is ingrained. You are unworthy to be Lin Zhanyuan's lawful wife. Divorce it is. Yuner is gentle and virtuous. She suits me perfectly. His words left me utterly indifferent. I focused solely on restoring my health, waiting to see how the drama would unfold. Finding his visits pointless, Lin Zhanyuan stopped coming. But that gentle and virtuous Su Yuner came. Xiao Chui said Su Yuner brought those 2 children to play outside my room every day, putting on airs like the mistress of the house. I pretended not to hear, reading the storybook Xiao Heng gave me inside. Xia Shirao visited one day, whistling in surprise. "Oh? You still have the heart to read storybooks?" I tossed the book aside and replied casually. Xiao Heng gave it to me, worried I'd get bored. Xia Shuyao couldn't help but ask. "That little shadow guard?" "Yes. Does he have feelings for you?" I paused, hesitant. "I doubt it." Xia Shuyao looked at me with exasperation. "Enough. You're hopelessly slow to catch on. When are you going to teach that pair of dogs a lesson?" You might not care, but I nearly had a heart attack just hearing bits of it. I raised an eyebrow. Tomorrow. I hadn't left the house in half a month. Lin Zhanyuan and Su Yuner were having a field day. The maids in the mansion said those 2 were reveling night after night. Even deep into the night, you could hear Su Yuner calling out General in a flirtatious, seductive voice. My stomach churned, yet I remained calm as I instructed the young maid, "Go tell the general I'm waiting for him at the magistrate's office. He must sign the divorce papers. And inform Lady Yun as well." Lady Yun was the crucial piece in this plan. If she were present, her dramatic displays, crying, causing a scene, even threatening suicide, would ensure Lin Zhanyuan, even in his lucid moments, couldn't refuse the divorce. He'd be entangled by her underhanded tactics. In the courtroom, Xie Shirao had already arranged for the divorce papers to be prepared. My dowry when I married Lin Zhanyuan was substantial. Now that we were divorcing, I intended to take it all with me. But when Lin Zhanyuan saw me produce the dowry list, a flicker of tension crossed his face, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. Sure, we grew up together. Yet here we are, His face wore regret. As if I were the one betraying our bond. Not him. Su Yuner feared our divorce might fail, leaving her unable to become the general's wife. She whimpered. General. I've waited so long for you. Su Yuner clung to Lin Zhanyuan, eager to stake her claim. But I didn't even spare her a glance. General Lin. You jest. You and Lady Yin are deeply in love, how could I possibly come between such a pair? Though, I must say, that tasseled hairpin on Lady Yun's head looks familiar. Lin Zhanyuan's expression stiffened, Shira must have mistaken it. Xiao Chui whispered in my ear, Miss. This is the crimson gold phoenix tail agate tassel hairpin the Empress Dowager bestowed upon you during your coming-of-age ceremony. Xiao Chui's voice was soft, yet loud enough for everyone in the courtroom and the onlookers outside to hear. The crowd murmured with unsavory whispers. Back when General Lin married the Xiao family's eldest daughter, it was the talk of the capital. Now, over some woman, he's actually seeking a divorce? What's going on here? Can someone explain? I don't understand at all. Seems General Lin stole the hairpin the Empress Dowager gifted to the Xiao family's daughter and gave it to that Yin concubine. What Yin concubine? General Lin hasn't even married her yet. She's just a disgraceful mistress. General Lin is blind as a bat. That whole incident at the brocade workshop where he bought clothes for 2 orphan children caused such a stir. I even praised him for his compassionate heart back then. What orphans? Those were clearly children born to General Lin and this concubine. That pair of scoundrels is utterly despicable. Lin Zhanyuan truly wasted the Marquis of Zhao's efforts in nurturing him. The common folk cursed incessantly, while Lin Zhanyuan's face flushed with rage. He just wanted to sign the divorce papers and flee this den of trouble. His face darkened as he pulled the hairpin from Su Yuner's bun and handed it to me. Sure. We've been husband and wife. Let's part amicably. I'd already signed the divorce papers long ago. After Lin Zhanyuan pressed his seal, I instructed Xiao Chui to put it away. When I returned to the general's mansion to pack my belongings, I had Xiao Heng fetch Jiang Boy, Su Tingzhou's biological father, and dump him at the door. The moment he saw Su Yuner, he bellowed, You worthless woman! Didn't I treat you well? Now that you've found a better catch, you're dumping me? And now you want my own son to call someone else father? At these words, Lin Zhanyuan's eyes darkened with cold fury. His voice carried a barely concealed rage. Yuner, is what he says true? Yuner immediately collapsed into Lin Zhanyuan's embrace. Her voice as delicate as a willow in the wind. General, please don't listen to his nonsense. You know well that in this life, I have only ever had you. Jiang Boy exploded, cursing and pointing at Su Yuner in Lin Zhanyuan's arms. You were a whore in the brothel, sleeping with every man. I paid to buy your freedom, and now you claim not to know me? You'll get your comeuppance. Su Yuner swore. General, every word I speak is true. May heaven strike me down if I lie. With such a solemn oath, Lin Zhanyuan's trust began to shift toward her. After watching this drama unfold for a while, I finally spoke up. General Lin, why not conduct a blood test to verify paternity? At the mention of a blood test, Su Yuner's face paled. She stammered, General, Tingzhou truly is your flesh and blood. If you test now, how will you and your son ever get along afterward? Lin Zhanyuan hesitated slightly, his resolve wavering. I spoke slowly. If the child isn't yours, General Lin, you've been raising someone else's child all this time. Do you think they might have colluded? Naturally suspicious. Lin Zhanyuan acted decisively upon hearing this. He ordered water to be prepared immediately, determined to proceed with the blood test. When Su Tingzhou was brought in, Su Yuner stood beside him, her expression defiant. Miss Xiao, you and the general are already divorced. Why do you constantly target me? Can't you bear to see me happy? Could it be you're jealous that I can bear children, while you cannot? This whole spectacle was deliberately staged by me at the general's mansion's main gate. Now, the crowd gathered around, whispering with relish. So General Lin married a barren woman, no wonder he divorced her. Barren and jealous? I'd never marry such a woman. Exactly. General Lin just wanted a concubine. Not 10. Why go through all this trouble? I narrowed my eyes, reevaluating Su Yuner. So she wasn't a mindless fool after all, she merely wielded her fragility as a weapon to ensnare men. But when her interests were threatened, she could bite back. Among the crowd defending Su Yuner, several familiar faces stood out. Fortunately, my memory served me well. The ringleaders were none other than the young nobles who'd spent the past 2 years carousing with Lin Zhanyuan. Madame Yun worries needlessly. As the legitimate daughter of the Shao family, I would never stoop to such disgraceful acts as becoming someone's mistress. But speaking strictly to the matter at hand, now that someone has slandered the origins of these 2 children, I have at least several years of marital bond with General Lin. I genuinely consider the general's interests and only wish to clear Madame's name. With just a few words, I directed the blame squarely at her. Now, she'd bleed whether she wanted to or not. The clear water prepared by General Lin Zhanyuan's trusted aide was, of course, perfectly fine. Guards escorted Su Tingzhou forward. They pricked his finger with a needle and dripped a single drop of blood into the bowl. Lin Zhanyuan did the same. The 2 drops of blood in the bowl did not mix. Su Tingzhou was not Lin Zhanyuan's child. I scoffed. General Lin. What a delightful pastime, spending 2 months fussing over these 2 bastards of unknown origin. Furious, Lin Zhanyuan grabbed Su Yuner's shoulders and shoved her forward. You poisonous woman. Look at this yourself. How dare you deceive me? I've fed and clothed you well. Yet you let some bastard from who knows where claim me as father? Su Yuner knelt on the ground, tugging at Lin Zhanyuan's robe. General, this water must be tampered with. Tingzhou is truly your biological child. Then she pointed at me. Her face twisted in fury. It's her. She orchestrated this. General, believe me. Lin Zhanyuan could no longer contain his rage. He struck Su Yuner across the face. You vile woman. Sure just lost her child, how could she scheme against yours? And now you dare make excuses? I won't rest until I beat you to death today to ease this hatred in my heart. Held down by servants as she was beaten, Su Yuner cursed Lin Zhanyuan's impending doom. Lin Zhanyuan, you beast! You couldn't resist temptation and took me yourself. Then plotted to kill your own flesh and blood for us 3. Who do you think you are? You all don't know yet. Do you? To get me into the general's mansion, Lin Zhanyuan deliberately had my son push his wife, who was suffering from unstable pregnancy. Miss Xiao, it's not me you should hate. Everything was tacitly approved by your dear husband. I watched this pair of dogs biting each other with a calm expression, seeing his painstakingly cultivated good reputation about to crumble. Lin Zhanyuan, in his fury, strangled Su Yuner to death. Su Tingzhou stood frozen, unable to comprehend the death of his own mother. After a moment, he cautiously called out to Lin Zhanyuan, Father. Lin Zhanyuan's piercing gaze snapped toward the voice, erupting in fury, Don't call me father. You and that Su Ninger, both of you should die alongside that whore. A cold smile curved my lips. The child is innocent. Even if my own flesh and blood was killed by Su Tingzhou, I did not take his life. Since he is not General Lin's child, it is only fitting that his biological father take him back to raise properly. The gathered crowd gasped in astonishment. They pointed fingers at Lin Zhanyuan, denouncing him as a hypocritical pretender. I watched their faces, seething with righteous indignation. Some practically spat venom at him. Yet Lin Zhanyuan himself saw only his own victimhood, shifting every blame onto others. Sure, it was all that whore Su Yuner's seduction. I was bewitched and fell into her trap. Sure, Please give me one more chance. I'm a man. Men are bound to make mistakes. Faced with Lin Zhanyuan's attempts to shirk responsibility, I offered no response whatsoever. I was waiting for one thing, the imperial edict that would condemn Lin Zhanyuan to eternal ruin. Xiao Heng's men surrounded me, ensuring Lin Zhanyuan could not come near. Jiang Bei, disdaining Su Ning'er as a woman, departed with only Su Tingzhou. Su Ning'er, however, was personally delivered to a brothel by Lin Zhanyuan. Once you enter such a place, escape is nearly impossible. Su Ning'er's life was ruined forever. As Lin Zhanyuan watched Su Ning'er being dragged away, her wrists bound by servants, her mouth stuffed with cotton, not a flicker of pity crossed his eyes. Perhaps I was wrong from the start. The man before me was no longer the man I once knew. The man who gave me candied hawthorn, took me sightseeing, and confessed his love in the peach blossom grove, all that was merely a facade for his climb to power. After a long while, the imperial edict I awaited arrived. By the mandate of heaven, the emperor decrees, General Lin Zhanyuan of the northern frontier, guilty of deceiving the sovereign, defying imperial authority, and disregarding the emperor's grace. Yet, considering his past merits, capital punishment is forgiven, but punishment for his crimes remains. He is hereby stripped of his title as General of the Northern Frontier, demoted to commoner status, and exiled to Lingnan. He is forbidden from ever returning to the capital. So decreed. Lin Zhanyuan took the imperial decree in a daze. After the official who delivered the decree left, his resentment finally erupted. Why? Why? I was the Grand General. Even the Emperor showed me respect. I glanced up at him. The Lin Zhanyuan before me bore no resemblance to that spirited youth of old. He was now a madman, utterly consumed by his own madness. I returned to the Marquis of Zhao's residence. When Mother saw me, she covered her face and wept. Father, at his advanced age, still had to toil and struggle because of me. The Zhao family's honor, built over generations, nearly crumbled because of me. I was consumed by shame. Before my marriage, they had agonized over my match, reluctant to let me go. They had repeatedly considered having Lin Zhanyuan marry into our family. But Lin Zhanyuan valued his pride, and I, so deeply infatuated with him at the time, insisted we start our own household, disregarding the parents who had raised me. I spent a leisurely month with my parents. During this time, Xiaoheng told me about Su Tingzhou and Su Ning'er's current situations, and also revealed that Su Ning'er was Lin Zhanyuan's biological child. Su Tingzhou's real father either beat or scolded him constantly. While Su Ning'er's life after being sold into a brothel was no better, she was tortured daily by drugs, suffering a fate worse than death. Autumn arrived, coinciding with the day Lin Zhanyuan was exiled. I felt it was time to visit him at the general's residence. Lin Zhanyuan looked gaunt and haggard, his eyes vacant. He gazed at me with a face etched by hardship. Sure, I've thought deeply these past days. I even had a dream. In it, I too was bewitched by Su Yuner, killing my own flesh and blood while doting on a bastard child as my own. All this is my own doing. I have no complaints. But, can you still forgive me? My expression remained calm, as if the protagonist in his words wasn't me. The Xiaoshu who married Lin Zhanyuan with such joy that year could never have imagined this outcome. Lin Zhanyuan, sure. I spoke calmly. Don't call me sure. You don't deserve it. I came only to tell you, Su Ning'er is your biological daughter. And she, at such a young age, was sent by her own father to a brothel, fed all manner of drugs. Guess what? Do you think she hates you? I begged for the imperial edict. When the emperor wanted to behead you, I pleaded for your exile instead. It's not that I still have feelings for you. Sometimes, living is far more painful than death. Lin Zhanyuan's eyes were hollow, unfocused. Filled with disbelief, how could this be? Then our child. My expression was cold as I stated the facts. Our child is gone. Didn't you know? It was your scheme. Wasn't it? Lin Zhanyuan asked. You knew all along. Didn't you? My gaze was icy. Yes. I knew from the start. I had the power to save him. But he was your bloodline. There was no reason for him to be born. Ha 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 ha. Lin Zhanyuan laughed maniacally. I thought he must be close to madness. The young general once renowned throughout the capital, who could have imagined he'd end up like this? Before I left, Lin Zhanyuan called out, could you call me husband one last time? My footsteps faltered. But in the end, I said nothing and walked away. Life after the divorce was light and carefree. One day, Xia Shirao came to invite me to the autumn hunt. She said she'd specially arranged this with the emperor, hoping I might find a husband to my liking. After repeatedly refusing to no avail, I went along, even though I'd been married before and lost a child. Many young gentlemen still approached me. After turning them all down, Xiao Heng appeared. He asked, will you be joining the hunt today, miss? I answered indirectly, Xiao Heng. With all your talents, wouldn't staying by my side be a waste of your abilities? Xiao Heng's expression abruptly changed. Are you trying to send me away, miss? I smiled faintly. How could that be? I was merely wondering what about me deserves such treatment from you. Seeing I hadn't dismissed him, Xiao Heng secretly breathed a sigh of relief. If it's you, miss, then it's worth it. My gaze flickered, and a smile spread from the corners of my eyes to my brows. I asked him, Xiao Heng, do you like me? Xiao Heng lowered his head, his ears flushing slightly. The next moment, he vanished. Xia Shuyao called to me from afar. Shuer, the second young master of the Yin family over there is quite nice. Come quickly. I waved her off. I won't be going. Xia Shirao looked puzzled, using her lightness skills to fly to my side. Why not? I stood up and casually said, I'm tired. I want to go back to the mansion. Xia Shirao, you just left and now you want to go back. What for? I swung myself onto my horse, not responding to Xia Shirao's question. Of course. To go back to the mansion and catch that big dog blushing. The end.